And welcome to the Krueger Show. Wow, what a game. Giants-Dodgers, the rivalry never, ever disappoints. 7-5, Giants win at Chavez Ravine. What a game. What a game. There's so many things we can talk about. Dodgers had a rookie on the mound. He was awesome. He threw no-hit ball. Roberts took him out. Flores goes deep. Giants get on the board. The momentum shifted. And that was just the beginning of a long night at Dodger Stadium between two longtime rivals. Welcome to the Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Two locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. Check them out, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Tonight on the live stream, on the bottom of the screen, Dan Coccimilgio. And, of course, on the top of the screen, Ned Colletti, former Dodger GM, former Giant assistant GM. Ned, the rivalry is never disappoints, and man, this was one for the ages. It really was. We don't see extra inning games that much. We definitely don't see games that go into the 11th that much. There was tons of drama, probably about 50 different things we could talk about. What an amazing performance tonight. Really just a great, not every baseball game is quite this juicy and this exciting. But this one did not disappoint. One for the ages. What'd you think?
So many different aspects to what went on.
Right.
I kept thinking, so what should we talk about? And the list kept getting longer and longer and longer. But at the end of the day, you know what? I give a lot of credit to the Giants. Down 4-0, getting no hit, and fought back and continue to fight back, lose a one-run lead late. Continue to come back, have the ball drop in the infield, continue to figure out and come back. A lot of staying power for this club, a lot of resiliency. Going back 30 years, that's kind of how the Giants have been successful. Robbie Thompson, all those guys play with great heart. You saw it again tonight.
Oh, my God. And this kid, Sheehan, let's talk about, why don't we start the conversation there? Dodgers started Emmett Sheehan.
Emmett Stripling.
No, Sheehan.
No, I know. He pitched a no-hitter just like Stripling did as a rookie against the Giants. And then they pulled Stripling, and then the Giants came back and won that game.
Well, Sheehan's a 23-year-old. What a dominant year he'd been having. He had a 1.86 ERA with 88 strikeouts and 23 walks over 53 and a third at Double-A. Electric fastball, very impressive changeup. He was the 13th prospect on their MLB pipeline list. So this guy's got legitimate ability. And let's be honest here, LA is, even though, I think most fans, if you haven't been watching, you just think of LA, they've got an abundance of riches on the mound. But LA's in kind of a weird spot coming into the series. They're coming off a brutal road trip. They went 2-4 on the trip. They lost 3 games on walk-off losses, and the health of the rotation has been a big concern. Urias and Dustin May are on the injured list. Syndergaard's got a blister. He's kind of unpitchable at this point. A lot of talk that they're going to go 4-man rotation maybe for the next month. Gonsolin goes later in this series. He's been pitching with velocity diminished. And it's really been Clayton Kershaw and this rookie Bobby Miller who have been pitching really well. So they go to Sheehan, and he was awesome. I mean, the guy really has big-time stuff. It just kind of goes to show that LA's got an endless depth of in their pipeline. What did you think of the young arm? Had you heard of him, Ned, or seen him before? Emmett Sheehan made his debut tonight, and he was terrific.
I hadn't seen him before, but had heard a lot of reports from scouts who have. Great stuff. That he lasted to the 6th round. I know Boston College, not really a premier baseball factory back in the East, but that he lasted to the 6th round with that stuff, kind of amazing to me. Andrew Friedman said the other day that the pitching they have at Tulsa, their Double-A team where Sheehan came up from, might be the best collection of pitching he's ever seen on one team in the minor leagues. So it may be the start of more, but he was outstanding. Poise and really great life to his stuff. Up in the zone and still through a pass, guys.
Yeah, and he's got just from watching him one time, I've never seen him before, he's got an ability to change your eye level because he's got a big kind of breaker, and then he's got hard fastball. What did you think of Roberts' decision to yank him? I mean, he'd gone 6, but it was only 89 pitches. Heck, we saw a Stanford kid pitch 150 pitches the other day in a college game. That probably wasn't right. But what do you think of this idea where you're pulling guys with no hitters? There's all kinds of in a way you could say, hey, Roberts is prioritizing the kid's career over this moment. But who knows? Maybe the guy, throws a no-hitter tonight.
You had a 4-run lead, and there was no diminishing of his stuff. So maybe there's a meeting ahead of time that says, hey, when he gets up to this level, that's the inning break, he's done. Because you didn't really see, like, suddenly he looked tired. Suddenly his stuff lost life to it. You didn't see any of that. And so what's the, outside of, well, okay, if you think that he's going to get hurt, what's the harm with the 4-run lead? Okay, you get a base runner or 2 on, I'm coming to get you. But in the meantime, keep dealing. If the kid's velocity started to wane a little bit, if he looked like he was looking for some help, yeah, okay, in a minute you got to do that. But he was breezing.
He was breezing, and it changes the momentum. And so, the Giants, as that kid's coming out of the game, are going, oh, thank God we couldn't touch that guy. And I'll say this, and Danny and I talked about this afternoon. The Giants have a horrendous track record against pitchers they have not seen. It's an amazing thing. It doesn't matter if the pitcher's good, and this guy was plenty good, but when they haven't seen a pitcher, it's like they don't touch him. They obviously didn't touch this guy. No hits. So they pull him after 89 pitches. Giants top 7, Wilmer Flores hits a 2-run bomb to make it 4-2. And now, as a Giants fan, you're feeling like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're down and we're on the road. But, the Giants, I think, and I don't have this right in front of me, but I think the Giants had won, what was it, 11 of 12. So tonight, they've with the win tonight, Giants have won 12 of the last 13 on the road. So, that right there is impressive. So Flores hits the 2-run shot. It's 4-2. Peterson's got the RBI single in the 8th inning. It's 4-3. And then Tyro Estrada hits a sac fly that scores Austin Slater in the 8th inning. That tied the game at 4. And then you get Casey Schmidt with 2 outs and runners on the corners, and he hit a ground ball to shortstop, and he beat the throw to first, and that brought in Jock Peterson, and the Giants had a 5-4 lead. We also probably should not forget to mention that to save the no-hitter or preserve the no-hitter, Mookie Betts, oh my God, that he makes a diving catch in right field to rob Jock Peterson of a hit. Betts is as good as there is in the game, Ned. Give me your thoughts on Betts as a player. He's just fantastic.
There's the old scouting term was a 5-tool player, right? Mookie Betts to me is a 6-tool player because of how he thinks the game, how he can anticipate. Just plays it. He's a genius at playing it, and we saw a great play there. Kept the no-hitter. I thought when that play was made, I thought, you know what? When you see something like that and there's been no hits at that point in time, you think, you know what? This may be one of those nights.
Right. Remind me a lot of Gregor Blanco playing center field behind Matt Cain's perfect game. It was just that kind of a play.
Yep.
Then to me, very a play that's totally forgotten, but Mike Yastrzemski called out by the home plate ump looking at a ball that, man, it really looked.
Smith had set up on the inside and he put his glove over to catch it. Usually if he set up outside, I can see you getting that call. Like, he didn't even have to move his glove, but he moved his glove right across the plate to get it. And I'm like, come on.
It was but he was consistent. Outside.
He was consistently bad all night for both teams.
But it wasn't just outside; it was up. It was on the top outside corner, and that would have been who knows? Maybe the game would have
walks in a run.
Right, walks in a run. Bags were loaded, and in hindsight, I'm kind of glad that he got rung up on that because look what we got. After that, we wouldn't have had this incredible show. But then Josh Outman, who's just a tremendous player, Sac State kid, NorCal guy, single to lead off the 8th against Tyler Rogers. Rogers then makes a super athletic play to get a force at second base on the Miguel Vargas comebacker. By the way, Ned, I love Miguel Vargas, and as far as a hitter, oh my goodness, what a good young hitter he is. But that was a terrific play by Tyler Rogers to get the force. I mean, he came off that mound like a cat, and he didn't hesitate. He threw to second, got the force out, and then eventually gets out of the 8th inning. Great performance by Tyler Rogers, and that's really been the key for the Giants. The pen has been incredible.
And Taylor Rogers, too.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got to Taylor yet, but Tyler at first. And then Camilo Doval, who's like 18 for his last 19 in saves, comes on to pitch the 9th. He gets Hayward to pop out to first base to start the inning. Then Rojas singles innocently to center field. He steals second base off Doval, who did not, really was off Doval. Doval just forgot about him. Betts then singles to left, but Rojas can only go to third, and it brings up Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman then just takes a big swing, but it didn't go anywhere. He popped a single in the shallow right field, and Estrada went back. It would have been an amazing catch if he had caught it. Instead, it falls. Rojas scores. Betts goes to second, and you got a 5-5 game. And this is where this game starts to get really interesting. Yes. It's 5-5, and you got Betts on second. And Betts gets a good lead against Doval, stealing third. I thought it was a really smart play by Roberts to send him, because it's like you're almost playing with the house money at that point. And Patrick Bailey comes firing out of his stance and throws an absolute P down to Casey Schmidt at third. Schmidt makes a blind sweep tag and just nabs the top hand of Betts. It could not have been any more perfect. An incredible throw by Bailey, an incredible tag by the third baseman. Schmidt, Freeman, they get Betts, which was just Ned. When I saw that lead, I'm like, oh, he's got that bag for sure. That right there, Patrick Bailey, that was just the first of many plays tonight by Bailey. Ned, give me your thoughts on Bailey. My goodness, he looks good.
What a great moment for two young players.
Yeah.
Your catcher and your third baseman, because I had thought, Doval doesn't really pay a lot of attention, doesn't really have a good move. Guy, the only thing I see flawed with him is that piece of his game, because guys are going to run because they're not going to get many opportunities. And knowing how Mookie plays, I thought, this cat's going to steal third base.
Yeah.
And
he got a good jump.
With a good jump. And the throw was as good as you'll ever see. It was a perfect throw. Great release, great transfer from the catch to the hand. The entire play was great, and a great tag.
Great play.
That to me was a difference maker in the game, because as I watch these two teams play, and I know them both pretty well.
Yeah,
the Dodgers got a lot of experience, a lot of talent. Giants got pretty good talent, but a lot of heart. And until that moment in time, the talent was kind of overtaking the heart at that point in the game. But that play right there changed it all. I thought changed it all. I think it told everybody in both dugouts, these guys can play.
No doubt. And then, see, I'm not feeling good right there, because Will Smith, as you know, and I know, and Danny knows, is a very clutch baseball player.
Really good player.
Really good player, and really good with like the money on the table.
Yes.
And instead of caving into him, Doval walked him. And I thought, you know what? That was really, really smart. And here comes JD Martinez, one of the great RBI men of his era. And he strikes him out on 102 mile an hour fastball. I mean, that was big time right there from Doval.
Yes.
But to pitch around Will Smith, I really felt like Will Smith was going to come through there if he had given in to Smith and tried to pitch to him. Instead, he's like, you know what? He's got a base open. Let's walk him. I thought that was
2-1 count. I mean, you're giving Will Smith two pitches. If you're going to challenge him and you're going to throw him strikes, you're giving him two chances. All he needs is one.
Yeah. No, so he strikes out JD Martinez on 102. But still, if you're a Dodger fan, you're feeling good. Why? Because LA's undefeated this year in extra innings and top 10 against Ferguson. Jock Peterson started out at second base. Tyro gets hit by a pitch, and you're like, okay, Giants are in business, first and second, nobody out. But then David VR pops up the bunt to third base.
Horrible form of a bunt, too. He didn't even square
Terrible.
to give him
Terrible.
Just like it looked like he was trying to bunt for a base hit. I mean, if you're going to bunt in that situation, first, second, nobody out, I mean, square up and put one down. Don't try and like last second just turn your hips and, you're not even – you have no speed. That was just pathetic. I mean, the guys were texting me. I said, those are the kind of plays that get you sent right back to the minors.
Yeah, and
You're
VR
hitting 141.
I know.
You got to be able to do something.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to be able to at least make that ball hit the grass.
Yes.
So then Schmidt hits the comebacker.
What are you doing, Ned? I'm curious. Before you, what do
Yeah.
you do in that situation as a GM when you see a player like that who's struggling and he's up and down from the roster and he's kind of up for reasons because they're depleted with some injury. A guy that struggles like that, does that tick you off as a GM and say,
Oh gosh,
I'm ready to send this guy back down tomorrow?
Well, you got to have somebody that's going to be better.
Right.
If you got somebody better, yeah, you make the move. If you don't, you're going to have to prop this kid up, and you're going to have to, give him some confidence. That play to me looked like a guy who knew what his average was,
right,
and looked like he was overmatched and pressing.
It's been a bad year for VR, to be honest, Ned. He got handed the third base job only to see J.D. Davis take it back from him in spring training. And so VR's kind of, he's a little free falling right now. But so anyways, now we're in the 10th inning and VR pops out. So you got one out. Then Casey Schmidt comes up. He hits a comebacker. Great play by Ferguson. Forces Jock out at third base. Here comes Patrick Bailey. Bailey pops out. And you're thinking, you know what? Giants are going to lose. It's this great game, but the Giants are going to lose because, the extra inning rules put a lot of pressure on the road team in the bottom of the inning if you don't score, and the Giants didn't score. So you had a tie game, and you had Taylor Rogers coming on with J.D. Martinez at second. The one advantage is J.D. doesn't run well, right? So there's not a lot of speed there. And Outman, I'll tell you, Taylor Rogers, Danny kind of referenced Rogers before. Taylor Rogers started terribly this year, but he has just been absolutely phenomenal in the last, Danny, how long? 3 weeks, 4 weeks? He's just
a good month.
Yeah, and his breaker is so amazing. It can look like it's going to hit you and it falls for a strike. He can look like it's right down the middle and it lands in the outside of the right-handed hitter's batter's box. And he gets Outman, who's a tremendous hitter, who is already 2 for 2 at this point. He gets him to pop out to shortstop and shallow left field. And I thought that was an interesting play too, because do you notice how when the Giants have this belief in Crawford, anytime Crawford is under a ball, people just stay away. It's like, then we're not even going to go in his neighborhood. If he's got it, doesn't matter where he is, shallow left, medium left. If he's got it, he's got it. So he pops out. Then Vargas, who's a great hitter, intentionally walked. You don't see that many hitters his age intentionally walked, but he was intentionally walked. And it brought up Michael Bush. And Bush hits a shot that I thought ended the game. And he hits it deep to Yaz and right. Yaz got a nice beat on it and made the catch. Martinez tagged and went to third. Dodgers go to their final bench piece, Austin Barnes. And I was not feeling good here, even though Austin Barnes comes up hitting 111. Ned, you know better than anybody. You've been watching the Dodgers a lot. Austin Barnes is pretty clutch, but he hasn't been a very good offensive player this year. He struck out to end the 10th against Taylor Rogers. So then we're going 11, and here comes Vesia. And Vesia, I think, is one of the real underrated relievers in the game. Maybe he hasn't been quite as good this year as last year, but you got Patrick Bailey at second base, and this is another great move by Bailey. Yaz hits a deep fly out to center field to Outman, but it wasn't like he was at the track. He was probably 25, 30 feet in front of the track. It was deep, but it wasn't like really deep. And Bailey tagged. I could not believe your catcher is tagging there.
I love the aggressiveness, though.
The kid is a winner. He's really a good baseball player in every phase. And I've heard it said. I heard it said this weekend when I was watching, or this week I was watching my high school kid play. I heard one of the coaches on the other team yell out, "Hey, you don't got to be fast to be a good base runner." And you know what? Truer words have never been spoken because Bailey's a pretty good base runner. He tagged, he went to third, and man, it was bang, bang. And LA challenged the call, but the safe call stood. And then Luis Matos comes up, and Luis Matos is a tremendous young player.
We just talked about him the other day. This kid walked 3 times tonight.
Yes,
I know. And this particular at-bat was impressive, wasn't it?
2 at-bats, he led off the inning. 2 of those walks, he led off.
That was a veteran at-bat.
Yes.
That third one.
Yes.
That was poised. That was smart.
Yeah. Oh, and then on 3-1, he fouls one back, but I mean, it's like Vesia throws mid-90s. A lot of, you look at Vesia and the big breaking stuff, you don't realize the guy's bringing 96. So, but that was a great at-bat, and he walks. So that brings up Brandon Crawford. And let
me just say one more thing.
Yeah.
How many young players that just got here are going to take that slider?
I know.
On a 3-2 pitch with a chance to do some damage and win a game. How many kids are going to be patient enough and read it out of the hand and lay off it?
An amazing.
It was down. I mean,
Ned, when you look at
down out of the zone, that was a great take.
When you look at a guy like Matos, I mean, you've been watching ball as long or longer than I have, but I'm just wondering. My eyes tell me this guy looks like a real player. I mean, he just has that look to me. Not saying he's going to be a superstar, who knows, but he has a look that looks different for his age than a lot of kids I've seen.
He's got a chance to be great. I mean, we've got a million miles to go.
Right.
But the first couple of blocks been pretty good.
Yeah. I talked to, we had Farhan on the radio today, 95.7 The Game, and we asked him about Matos, and he's like, yeah, I mean, the guy's been really impressive in the minor leagues. And there's several things that he does down there that kind of say to us, you know what, this is not your everyday prospect. I mean, even as prospects go, they're impressed by him. And for the Giants, Ned, I mean, you know how hard it's been for the Giants to develop young outfielders. This kid looks legit. So that brings up Crawford. And Crawford has had an ugly final year. I mean, this is probably his final year. That's my guess. But he's hitting 197, and he comes up there against Vesia, and you could see he was totally left on left, and he's not hitting lefties. And you could see that Crawford was geared for the fastball, and he got a breaking ball early, and he was so early on it, and he falls into a hole. But man, Crawford hits a rocket to right center that scored Bailey to give the Giants the 6-5 lead. It was an incredible shot by Crawford. Brandon Crawford has been really good with runners in scoring position this year. And even though he was hitting 197, he came through there and became the star, made it 6-5 Giants. Matos goes to third. And then Austin Slater with one out comes up, and he singles to right field, and that scores Matos to make it 7-5. Jock Peterson struck out for the second out. Tyro struck out to end the inning, and the Giants take a 7-5 lead into the bottom of the 11th. Here comes Jacob Junis, who doesn't have a save all year, and Bush is at second to start the inning. Vargas grounds out to shortstop. You're thinking, okay, maybe the Giants are going to get an easy one here. Betts pops out to third base, but no, Casey Schmidt drops the ball and then throws it down. Junis throws it down the right field line.
Junis, yeah.
And I'm thinking Bush is scoring for fun and Betts is in scoring position and we may be going 12. Instead,
or it may be over.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, yeah, exactly. Or the inning could continue and be over because Freddie Freeman's coming up, and Freddie Freeman's maybe the best hitter in the league. And exactly. What did you see on that play? I mean, it's going to be a long night for Bush, isn't it?
Yeah.
What happened there with Bush?
Misread the situation. Hasn't played in the big leagues a lot. And typically guys that come up in that organization got a lot of poise to them, and they fit in really. You're talking about Vargas, talking about Altman, but it looked like some indecision and panic kind of struck.
Well, here's what I was thinking on it, because I first thought, yeah, he should have scored. But then I'm thinking, because the TV didn't show it, it's popped up. he's probably hanging around close to second, maybe 10 feet off, waits to see if it gets caught. He probably thought it was going to get caught and started maybe to go back towards second because it hit Schmidt's glove, and he might have saw the glove. But then he probably thought, well, if I take off for third, I might get thrown out.
But who's covering third?
I don't know.
Yeah, there was nobody on third. There was nobody on third, and he throws at second.
So he probably looked over there, and then by that time, he didn't take off till the ball was thrown over first base.
He should have took off because there was nobody at third.
He should have. Yes. He should have, but he probably was. My guess is I'm wondering if his back was to the ball, like if he was heading towards second.
Your back can't be to the ball.
No.
Yeah, you can't be. You got to be looking at it.
I mean, it's no different than Little League. You know, it's the same thing in Little League. You're saying to yourself, "What do I do?" You know, if you're in the field, you say, "What do I do if the ball's hit to me?" It's just it's the way you play baseball. And if you're on second base, you know you've got that secondary lead. You're expecting the pop up to be caught, but you know you're probably headed back to the bag. But as soon as it's dropped, you can see Casey Schmidt is 25 feet away from third base. You got to go to third. Yes. He obviously didn't go back to third. He obviously went back to go to third. He went to second. Then the throw gets thrown away. But even then, you've got to score on that.
You've got to make them make a play at the plate on you.
Right.
You've got to make them execute that play. Because right then and there, the defense is in a chaotic place.
Right.
Your third baseman has dropped a
panic.
And the relief pitcher's throwing it, down the line.
And
then close down the line. I mean, way up. You got to put pressure on the defense to regroup and make a play at the plate.
So he made the first mistake. There's no question. But then Betts makes a huge mistake because Betts has got the whole thing in front of him.
Yes.
And that's the one part about this that, I mean, first of all, when you drop a pop-up, already bad play defense, then you throw the ball away. How many times have you seen a defense make two gaffes and not have it cost them at all? And that's what happened here. So Bush goes to third, but Betts made the thing. He made the thing even worse because he's got the play in front of him, and he just ran to third like Bush wasn't even there.
He may have thought this guy's on second base. He had to have some secondary lead. They just dropped the ball, threw the ball down the line. He's got to be scoring. He may have not have been watching the play and just thinking, I'm going to make them put a pressure on third, after the play at the plate. And there was no play at the plate.
But
I would love to see what
got that play in front of him
doing too.
Don't you got to blame Mookie a little bit though? Because Mookie's literally running from first to second. He's got to put an eye over at where the base runner is. No.
Yes.
And what was the third base coach doing? I wonder. Was he trying to wave Bush home, or did he hold him up? I mean,
I don't know. This would be
who is the third base coach there?
Dina Liebel.
Okay.
Hey, wow. Is it possible? I mean, if I was in Little League, and I was playing left field, my manager would have said, you're covering third base on that play because your third baseman just is running in full. Schmidt was probably playing back close to the grass at third, I'm guessing, because that should have been a can of corn, but he comes running in at the last minute, because it looked like Bailey was going to take it, and then of course, and this is another thing. I mean, I always heard, pitcher, get away, don't take a pop up. But a lot of times your pitchers grew up as some of your best athletes. They were they played shortstop and pitched but I mean, what is that just a thing that'll never go away? The pitcher can't catch a fly ball in the infield.
You see it once in a blue moon.
Yeah, not very much. You see it sometimes in the in high school and stuff, but in the majors, it's like the pitcher almost never does.
But again, you've got how many situations has he been in like this?
Right.
This is his first big league save. 3 seconds after should he have gone for and made the play, and he throws the ball down the line.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what he was thinking.
Guarantee if he calls anybody off, he's catching it either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that probably on hindsight, from the get-go, as soon as it went up, and that Schmidt should have been charging full speed in for that, shouldn't he have? I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
The other,
he looked hesitant to me. He looked like he was like unsure of it. Like, am I supposed to take this, or is Bailey supposed to? I guess it's mine. And he just kind of lunged for it at the last second.
I'll tell you what really makes this game even better for me as a viewer is that the Giants have had a parade of 4A guys and minor league guys, and there's not, but now we know that we're talking about their guys. Matos is going to be their guy. Bailey's going to be their guy. Casey Schmidt's going to be their guy. These are their and these guys are all in their rookie season.
Yes.
So it's like part of like the maturation of the Giants core. And this was a huge game for the Giants. I'm so eager to see the rest of this series now, to see how the Giants look as far as swagger, how they play in the rest of the series, how competitive the rest of this series is, because this is not like some random guy who was called up yesterday and to be farmed out tomorrow. These are their guys. And going forward, and in a lot of ways, we're seeing like kind of another chapter of Giant Dodger lore, because it's not just nobodies. Do you remember Patrick Bailey as a rookie? Do you remember Luis Matos as a rookie? Do you remember the Schmidt tag of Betts at third from the perfect throw from Bailey when they were both rookies at Dodger Stadium on that Friday night game in June in 2023? You know what I'm saying? It has a little bit more juice and like kind of staying power, because we're kind of looking at the guys that are going to be, key contributors for both teams going into the future. So very exciting game. Tomorrow it's the Giants going undecided. I don't know who's starting tomorrow, Danny. Do you know who's starting tomorrow against Bobby Miller?
It's undecided still. It could be Alex Wood. He's ready to go. I think after tonight, especially after a bullpen got stretched, they're going to need Wood to go at least 5, try and get him 5. So you also could see somebody come up tonight or tomorrow.
Really
surprised me. Oh yeah. Just
Farhan kind of referenced that today. He said, we've called up some guys. He's like, and we've got a few more guys that we're probably going to be calling up here. So I don't know does that mean Kyle Harrison? He just pitched last night.
No, I don't think it's Harrison. I think it's somebody that can, give you a couple of innings in the bullpen and send them back down, after the game if they need him. They're going to need, if Wood's going, he's not going more than 5. He has hardly been able to get into the 5th inning this year. So, and he's coming off of the IL. So I think the most you can expect from him is probably 75 pitches, maybe 5 innings if he's pitching well, then you're going to need some reinforcements. And, Junis can probably give you a couple more. He only pitched the 1 inning, and he's a guy that's stretched out to throw 4 or 5 innings. So he might be able to give you a couple. But a move that I wouldn't be shocked to see is Mitch Haniger had surgery yesterday. They said 10 weeks. That's 70 days. They're going to move him to the 60-day IL, going to create a roster spot. You could get a non-roster guy like Fitzgerald, who's been hitting like 300 down, plays short, plays second, plays third. And maybe they send VR down tomorrow just to let them know.
Oh, hey, God, that would be a brutal trip back to the minors after tonight's game. That's interesting. Los D says that gentleman was an all-time Bad News Bears play. I'm speechless watching that back. Ned, of the Giants' young players that you've seen, the one thing about it that it's a great topic is that they're all very impressive. Bailey, to me, is very impressive as a catcher, as a framer, as a thrower, as a hitter. Matos is very impressive. His best tool, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, is he's got a ridiculous howitzer, Puig-like throwing arm. I mean, this guy's got a crazy throwing arm. And then Casey Schmidt is just a natural. He hasn't even played the position where he'll probably win a Gold Glove someday, and that's third base. He's a Gold Glove third baseman. He's so good defensively that he's playing short and third and just trying to. It kind of reminds me of a young Matt Williams in the late 80s being introduced at the major league level, who played short at Vegas, UNLV, and came up as a shortstop. Eventually, became a Gold Glove third baseman. But which of these young Giant players impresses you the most as a talent evaluator?
I wouldn't want to put one ahead of the other.
Yeah.
I think all three of these players, and the season's a long year. There's a lot of things that are going to happen, but they are all impressive. The play at third base today, the throw out at third, to me was something they'll never forget. You're talking about playing a team that's been to the playoffs the last 10 years at home, on the road, all of this, their first time in there type of thing. And you're able to pull off that play against one of the best players in the game. That will live with these kids for a long, long time, if not forever. And then what we've seen out of Matos, he's, again, like I said a couple minutes ago, to have the patience and the confidence to take that 3-2 pitch after following one straight back and being right on it, almost like, okay, I'm swinging wherever this thing is going, I'm swinging. And he held off. That's about as good as you're ever going to see from a kid at this stage. So there's no way I could rank one over the other. You're talking about a catcher? Tough to find those.
Yeah.
You're talking about two guys that have great poise tonight. It's impressive. And the closer.
Well, I'll tell you, Duvall's been incredible.
Yeah.
One of the stories that I saw earlier this week, and you probably saw it as well, it was on MLB Trade Rumors. A person that you know real well, Kim Ng, who runs the Marlins, is hot to trot on the pursuit of a catcher. And one of the names that came up was Joey Bart. And, if you look around the sport, if you need a catcher, there aren't a lot of catchers. No. And I threw out this week that, I'll tell you the guy that, and I was saying it to Danny, the guy that Danny and I have been rooting that the Giants could get at some point is Jazz Chisholm, because, he's a guy who can play a few spots and he can run and he can steal bases and he gives you a lot of energy. And, I suggested maybe a Joey Bart, Jazz Chisholm kind of a swap, and people were laughing at me going, oh, come on, you're not going to get Jazz Chisholm for Joey Bart, but Jazz Chisholm's hitting 210 and they got a bunch of outfielders, and Joey Bart is a young catcher who's got a low contract, a lot of upside, a lot of bat speed, and probably is available based on what we've seen. Maybe not, because they don't have a real good backup behind him. But what, it's to me, that's something that's really interesting. The guy that we also had on the radio today is a guy that probably. Do you know Kyle Haynes?
I do not.
Okay, Kyle Haynes, I guess, came after you left. He was a Giant draft pick. Sabian then had him in the regime as like one of the farm directors through the years, and then he's still here now with Farhan. And we talked to him about a number of the minor leaguers, and
that was a great segment, by the way, Larry. He's their farm director, right? Head of the farm.
He's got a much longer worded title, director of player personnel development and that kind of thing. But yeah, he's basically the farm director. And he said, hey, I'm invested in every one of these kids. And we talked about, who they've got and who's coming and what development was needed and what adjustments were made. And it just goes to show that, there's a ton that goes into it, Ned. You know better than anybody. You draft these guys, and then you draft them out of high school or college, or you're signing, the Giants signed this young kid, Rainier Arias. He's like 16 years old, and it might be 6-7 years before that guy actually makes it to the majors. And there's just so much that goes into getting these kids from either Venezuela or the DR through rookie ball, A ball, double A, triple A, the time adjustments, the language barriers, the tutelage, the injury factor. There's just so much. Baseball development is just, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's not, let's say it's a crapshoot. Maybe that puts a little bit too much into the stars. There's some genius to it, but man, it's a long, arduous road, and it takes an awful lot of people to develop these players, doesn't it?
No doubt. Think about the major sports. List the major sports, Danny. besides baseball?
Yeah, football,
Okay.
basketball, and hockey.
Okay. You throw soccer in there if you want.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
if you internationally, if you want to
Nobody
get
has a development system like baseball. Nobody.
Right. Where it
And
takes years, where
it's a
even if you're a
long,
star, it's going to take you 3 years.
yes, it's difficult. And the player development people and the leader of the player development people, to me, has the second toughest and most important job on the baseball operations side. GM got the top, but right below the GM is that farm director. Got a lot of people to think about, got a lot of teams to keep track of, got a lot of progress, got to make sure all your staff, you can only be in one place at a time and maybe two cities in a day. You got to make sure that those people who are coaching your players, training your players, building the culture of your organization don't need a lot of supervision, that they get it, that they understand what Farhan's goal is, what Gabe's goal is, what Andrew Friedman's goal is, Dave Roberts' goal is. You've got to know that and hold it every day. And you've got 200 players in the system. At most, you're going to see 50 in a day. Most of the time, you're going to see 15 or 20 in a day. So there's a lot that goes into it. So, that is the most probably important and underrated position, maybe in sport, because of what we started this topic with, that no other sport has this development system.
Takes so long. It takes so long. One of the comments here that really, this one illustrates Jose Castaneda. How crazy is it that a 21-year-old getting 3 walks in his second MLB game
in the environment he was in?
Right.
He wasn't playing, a last place team that, at home, and that's a great point.
Yeah, big. Yeah,
Tremendous.
I thought it was interesting that when you were talking to Kyle Haynes earlier today, Larry, that you mentioned you'll be talking with Farhan later in the show, and he said you asked him to ask Farhan, should I ask Farhan? He goes, I talk to Farhan every day. You go ahead and ask him. I mean, obviously, your GM, you're talking to your farm guy. You want to know what's going on in the organization all up and down, right, Ned? I mean, you got to know what's happening on a daily basis.
Mentioned. I mean, you have got a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got injuries, sometimes you got off the field issues. You've got a lot to manage. You are managing people that are 16 years old to 30 years old. That may or may not speak English very well at this stage of their life.
A question that
in a different place and time than they've ever been.
Question that somebody had asked me to ask you is, does any, since we're talking about minor leagues, does any of this go on where teams try to pluck other teams' top scouts or farm directors? Can they do that and pay them twice as much, or is there a rule that they have to have a promotion?
They have to have a promotion unless an organization wants somebody to leave, and then they let them leave. Like the influx of presidents of baseball operations, almost all of them were GMs, and so for them, you couldn't get them to go someplace else by making them the GM. They're already the GM.
Yeah.
So you make them the president of baseball operations, whose job is basically that of the GM.
How much does the GM do versus
your assistant GMs become your GMs? What?
How much does the GM do versus the president? Is the GM doing a lot of the day-to-day, is doing trades or putting trades together, or how's that work?
Probably and every organization is going to be slightly different, Danny. But it's basically the GM is now titled the president, and the assistant GM is now titled the GM. So the responsibilities of assistant GMs are what GMs are doing today. by and large. And those that were GMs 10, 20 years ago, they're now presidents of it.
Right.
The jobs have probably changed very, very little as far as the responsibility, a change in responsibility, maybe 10%.
Amazing. Chardal says, "Hey Larry, can you send me the StreamYard link?" Chardal, I think this one just maybe more.
I already told him no.
Yeah, maybe more. Maybe maybe don't think of interactive tonight. Maybe think of more of like a movie, like when you go to a movie and you just watch. We got this one.
About the NL West too.
What's that?
We should talk about the NL West. This is getting interesting.
Oh, it's and that kind of leads us to this. Spencer Stewart says the only pen worse than the Dodgers right now is Oakland's. Dodgers penny ERA is 4.90. Yikes! I mentioned how much I like Vesia, but Vesia hasn't had necessarily a great year this year. What do you think, Ned? I mean, we're here June 16th. You're what month and a half before the trade deadline. What do you think from you've probably seen a lot of the Dodgers. You think Friedman's going to go heavy after the Giolitos and the Biebers and the top starting pitchers in the market? Do you think they'll try to go after a Chapman from Kansas City to add a big time bullpen arm? Where do you see Friedman trying to add to his club in the next 6 weeks or so?
Well, two things I'd be looking at is how are the other teams in the division? Do I think Arizona is going to be able to continue to be one or maybe two? I don't know. Two great starting pitchers, Galen and Kelly. After that, not so much. So I have to look at the competition. Giants, they got enough? Are they for real? They've been playing great. They've been playing better than maybe anybody but Arizona, probably equal to Arizona the last month. You got to look at that first and decide who your competition is and how are they. And you got San Diego kind of playing a little bit better, but still kind of laboring back. And then you have to figure out who you got coming back. And only they know that. Is Walker Buehler going to come back in September? Is Dustin May going to come back in December? Does Syndergaard come back and instead of starting, which has been a struggle for him, go to the pen and get 3 outs instead of trying to struggle through 4, 5, 6 innings? So you've got a little bit of, providing those guys can come back. We don't know if they can or they can't. They know far better than we do. You got to think about that. Relief pitchers, you don't know what you're getting all the time. Starting pitchers, you also don't necessarily know what you're getting all the time. But the relief pitcher market has always got a vulnerability to it. It's the penny stock. Okay. May click. You may be looking to move it, but as soon as you get it. So I think that while their bullpen has struggled, and it's really been uncharacteristic of the organization for a very long time. I don't know. I think if they have one big move, maybe a starting pitcher, because look at their rotation. Clayton's been great. Clayton's 35 years old.
Yeah.
Julio's missed a month. He's going to miss another couple weeks probably, minimum. Okay? You got 2 stars there. Bobby Miller, everybody liked what they saw in Sheehan tonight. Bobby Miller has been that way in 4 or 5 games now. Real. 6'5", big kid, strong kid, knows how to pitch, great stuff. Okay. But last year, I think he may have thrown 115, 120 innings. He's probably up near 40 right now. What's that look like? Because 120 last year weren't in the big leagues. So, I would be thinking about that and thinking, where is he going to be 70 innings from now? As crisp and as powerful as he is, big kid. But there's a lot more to the game, mental aspect to it, compete aspect to it. You may need another starting pitcher. Tony Gonsolin, velocity's been down his last couple starts. Where's he at? So,
and when that happens, Ned, do you order tests done with your trainer? Do you personally want to talk to that player when his velocity's down? Because usually you
One
know,
of your
that,
own players?
yeah, I mean, like, is that reek to you of tired arm, or, who do you like if you see, hey, Gonsolin's velocity's down, what phone call are you making?
Well, you're talking to your trainer every day.
Right.
Besides your farm director, you're talking to your trainer every day, and your pitching coach and your bullpen coach, and you're seeing where everybody's at on a daily basis. It's a kaleidoscope. Danny and I know what kaleidoscopes are. Larry, you might be a little bit too young to remember that. Where you turn it just a little bit, it changes everything. And so,
I love those as a kid. You'd sit there.
Tony's it's great, but Tony's also had some injuries.
Right.
He was all-star a year ago and didn't pitch much the last 2 months. So, you know the history, and you know the vulnerability of certain arms, certain deliveries. So you could also, if you got a starting pitcher, and everybody comes back, and you have, quote, for the stretch drive, 5 stud starting pitchers, one of those guys can go to the bullpen. You can't be taking a bullpen guy out and making him a starting pitcher. Yeah, opener, sure. To me, that's not a starting pitcher. So to get somebody that could give you 5 or 6 innings may help both areas and getting guys back. What's the question we got here?
This one's does Ned think the Dodgers will be big time buyers at the deadline for bullpen arms from senior softball?
We just kind of addressed that.
Yeah. We got this one also. We got this one. Would Ned move one of the top pitching prospects for the front of the rotation starter to help the Giants down the stretch? Now, let's talk about this for a second. We had you on the other day. You said, hey, I really wouldn't want to move anybody who I thought was going to be significant for me prospect-wise down the road, or really anybody that I thought was going to be a contributor. I would try to move guys further down the list. Yeah. But, it's funny. I asked Farhan today, I said, what do you need to reach October? And he said, I'm always thinking about, if we got into a playoff series, who's my game 1 starter? Who's my game 2 starter? Who's my game 3 starter? So he's thinking, about rotation. There's a list out today that I saw of available starting pitchers. I'll just throw the names at you, and then you tell me if any of these guys jump out to you. Shane Bieber from the Guardians, Paul Blackburn from the A's. I don't think he's moving, but Alex Cobb of the Giants. Lucas Giolito from the White Sox is a guy I personally like if he's healthy. Zach Greinke from the Royals, who you know. Michael Lorenzen from the Tigers. Aaron Nola, who I like as well, for the Phillies. Eduardo Rodriguez in Detroit. Drew Smyly, who's already been a Giant with the Cubbies. And if Marcus Stroman doesn't stay in Chicago, maybe Marcus Stroman from the Cubs. Ned, has your mind changed at all as far as, we know the Giants are a little bit ahead of schedule, but we also know that, Farhan's been the GM now for a few years, and I don't know what pressure he's under by the ownership group, but I'm sure he would love an October an appearance in the playoffs to kind of reestablish the regime and kind of excite the fan base. There's been a lot of empty seats in San Francisco, Ned, something that I know you're not very familiar seeing during your time here. Where are the Giants in
years here?
Yeah, where are the Giants in their development? Are we know they're ahead of schedule, so to speak, as far as nobody picked them to win this year. But do you look at the situation and say, you know what? There's value in us getting to October for our fan base, for our ownership, and for our momentum. But at the same time, there's no way I'm moving Kyle Harrison or this Carson Wisenhunt, who Kyle Haynes told me he's 96 from the left side with a Bugs Bunny changeup that is just an awesome pitch. Farhan referred to it as a plus changeup. So you got 2 true lefty
top above average pitches for a lefty. You're going to play in the major leagues. If you're a lefty with 3+ pitches, you're going to be in the big leagues for a long time.
So you're not moving those guys. That's a no doubt or no brainer. I won't even ask you that. But how important is it for the Giants in your mind this year to make it into even a wild card, as opposed to, would you rather call up Harrison and Wisenhunt and try to ride some of your young arms for the rotation help that you need. Take us behind the scenes. If you and Brian were still operating the Giants, what kind of dialogue would there be? Would you bring it up to him? Would he bring it up to you? Is it a pregame discussion? Is it a late night walk through downtown Los Angeles discussion? How are you guys discussing where we're at and potentially our options over the next 6 weeks?
First and foremost, you have to be realistic with where your team is at. If at the end of July, if you're sitting 5 or 6 back and you're in third place and somebody else is 2 or 3 back, you're about 9 or 10 back because you got to chase 2 teams down. You got to be realistic to it. I think if this team competes, and I think if you look at the young prospects that we just talked about, I would be surprised if Farhan had to have an October visit to stay. You start developing players and they compete, and you have a chance to stay in it. You kind of ride that. You mentioned those starting pitchers, Stroman, Nola. Okay, those 2 guys can make a difference for you. The other guys, what are you going to get? You have no idea what you're going to get.
Right. Health-wise or consistency-wise.
Yeah. So, you're not trading any of those top 2 or 3 guys. Those guys are off limits unless you're getting a guy that's got 4 years of major league service and is top of his game. Okay. You can't be moving any of those 3.
Mark Graves says no rentals on trades, of course. We know that.
Hey, Larry, could you put up this second to the last William Weston? I want to address this because I've been.
I will. Let Ned finish his answer.
Yeah.
So you can get yourself Stroman or Nola, and you're sitting 7 or 8 back total. A little bit tough against the Dodgers if they're the one leading. You'd go for it. Those other guys, you're just flipping a coin. You don't know if it's going to be better or not. And the way this organization is going to win is a combination of developing their own and filling it in from time to time with a big free agent. That's how they're going to win. So you can't start taking away a real contributor from the 24, 25, 26 team and using it for somebody that's going to be here for 2 months. Can't do it.
And you don't want to do it because it would shortchange you've built this great core and you've got all this momentum. And the last thing you want to do is shortchange it. Danny asked for this one. He says, William Weston jumps in. This is the one you're talking about, Danny, right?
Yeah.
He says, I wouldn't call up Kyle Harrison this year. Still has control issues, but watch out for 2024. Let him get the full year under his belt. I asked Farhan, I said, is Harrison and Carson Whisenhunt, are they going to contribute at the major league level this year? And he said, hey, look, once you're in AA, you're a phone call away.
Saw that tonight from the kid from the Dodgers came up from AA.
Yeah, and that was Farhan's sentiment as well. He's like, once you're in AA or AAA, you're a phone call away. So, it might be 1 or 2 things that they're looking for. It might just be, that they're trying to limit their innings down there, so they're not in any way burnt out. They're trying to get them to not make sure that they're not being stretched down there. So if they have to be called up, they can contribute.
What I wanted to address
is the right thing. So,
yeah.
What's that?
What Farhan said is the right thing to say.
Yeah.
Because, are you going to say, no, we're never bringing Harrison up this year? We're never bringing Whisenhunt up this year? I mean, you can't tell anybody that because you don't know what's coming tomorrow.
Right.
Exactly.
So what he said, I think, is exactly the right way of putting it. And you wait and see. Who knows? Maybe they call Harrison up in September just to be here, just to see what it looks like.
I think Harrison is part of if they make it to October, he's part of the 1, 2, 3, 4 that Farhan talked about. Here's why. You watched the game tonight. You saw a lot of high strikes called, a lot, and that were out of the box. In AAA, they run the robot. All those pitches that are getting called balls for Harrison, running his pitch count up, would be strikes up here. Plus, he has a lot of swing and misses. He has one of the highest swing and misses in all of minor league baseball. So he's throwing more pitches. Some of those balls are going to get hit for outs in the big leagues. Some are going to get hit for hits, but a lot of these pitches that are borderline strikes that are just out of the zone are called a ball. And so he's only going 4 1/3, 4 2/3. He went 5 innings a couple nights ago, last night, through 81 pitches, struck out 8 batters. That's, 8 batters times 3 is 24. How many balls were in there? Probably another 16 or 20 more pitches that were balls. So I think Harrison, and I think what the Giants are doing with Harrison is smart. They're pacing him. They're not letting him go over 80 pitches because they don't want to wear him out, because he's part of the plan for the second half. You watch and see. Kyle Harrison will be up sometime in August, if not sooner, helping the Giants.
Yeah, maybe sooner. Will Martinez says Stroman's a strong possibility. Farhan went after him and lost out to the Cubs. So Farhan thinks highly of him. He's going to be out of options. He's going to opt out of his contract, I should say, and the Cubs are out of the race already. I don't know if they're out of the race, but I hear what you're saying. Is this okay? So paint us the picture, Ned, as being a general manager in mid-June. I've talked to you about, hey, in different years when you were here, about, hey, when do you start to canvas? When do you start to make phone calls? You don't want to insult anybody. As Danny said, well, this team could be out. Yeah, it's a very rare team, to be honest, that's out. I mean, the A's, if you called the A's right now and said, David Forrest, I'd like to talk about Blackburn, he's not going to be insulted. They've lost a ton of games. They're, whatever, they're record-setting numbers of games behind. But there's a lot of other teams. There's a lot of games left. We're talking about almost 100 games left. How does the initial conversations go? And is everybody on the same timeline of like, you know what, we'll start talking now, but we're not going to consummate until late July? Or do you as a general manager say, you know what, I'm making the call now and it's a little early because I actually would like to do this early? The deal that I think of when I think of the best deal, one that I'm sure you will remember like it was yesterday, was the Cubbies getting Sutcliffe in 84. And I don't think that was a July trade. I think that was an earlier trade.
It was about June 13th, but I think the trading deadline was June 15th.
It was?
It may have been, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so and they gave up a lot, right? They gave up Joe Carter and Mel Hall.
Oh yeah, well he was also 16-1.
He went 16-1.
Yeah,
and the Cubbies went to the playoffs.
To answer the hypotheticals,
yeah.
As a GM or a president of baseball, you're staying in touch with everybody. You're constantly just checking in. How you doing? What's going on? Maybe it's just small talk, but you're not surprised when anybody gets dealt, because you've had conversations that have gone on really probably since the beginning of May, spring training perhaps, but the beginning of May. And just because you want to do something early doesn't mean that the other side wants to do something early. But I think, and you don't embarrass somebody by saying, hey, look, I know we're only at the 70 game mark, but hey, if you ever if you ever think about moving Stroman, just keep us in mind. Ever thinking about moving Nola, keep us in mind. They're starting to play a little bit better, probably a tough one there, but you can do that. You can drop a hint like that. You know who their top scouts are. You got your top scouts, I guess a team scout, that are in ballparks all the time, and they talk. Hey, call Dave. Next time you're talking to Dave, tell him if he wants to move Nola. We've got strong interest in it. You keep doing it. You keep doing it over and over, and that's how you do it. A lot of the deals I made, the groundwork were set sometimes a year in advance, and sometimes months in advance. Adrian Gonzalez, Boston.
2012, you're talking about the 2012 deal?
Big market, right? Boston, fan base, massive, sellouts at Fenway. Ben called me, I called Ben, I can't remember what, end of April. We had new ownership starting May 1st. So I call him. He says, "How's the new owners and this and that?" I said, "You know what? We're going to be able to do some stuff." And I says, "If you ever get around to moving Gonzalez, let me know." And he goes, "Oh, I could never do that." And he was right. On May 1st, he was right. When we got to August, he was saying, "Hey, you still got an interest?" Yeah. But you gotta put it out there. There's no harm in putting it out there respectfully. It's how you phrase it, really, and your relationship with different people. And you've got to know everybody. You've got to know everybody. You've got to scout everybody, not players. We all know that, but other GMs, how they work, how they think, where are they at in their career, in their contract? Are they anxious? Is their ownership banging on them to lower the payroll? I made 2 deals with Florida because I could pay all the salary after new ownership came in. One was for Hanley Ramirez.
Yeah.
Look at the date of that deal. It was the middle of the month. And looking at it, I was what's his name? Nolasco. Nolasco got in the middle of the month, starting pitcher.
Yeah.
Pitched well for us because we could take all the payroll, and they were looking to get rid of. It was as important for them to move money as it was for whoever they got back. But you have to know that ahead of time. You got to do all your homework.
Ned,
do you
ever get tips like from certain clubs before they may reach out to other clubs? Like you have special relationships with other GMs, or maybe even a tip from a outsider that says, "Hey, I heard these guys are hurting financially and they're looking to unload."
Like
somebody listening to the Krueger show might dial you up. Look, it's nobody is going to make a deal to take a second or third rate deal.
Right.
It doesn't happen. Jobs are too precious. Competition is too fierce. Yeah, you may have a great friend. I had a lot of great friends in the game, and some I made deals with, but they weren't going to give me a break because we were great friends.
No. I don't mean a great deal, but hey, I'll give you first shot at this guy. Who do you got?
Well, what does that mean, though, Danny? What does first shot mean?
Well, like
they're not going to call anybody else.
They're not going to. Nobody's taking 80 cents on the dollar because
for I'm going to give
good
you
vibes.
First shot. Well, what is that? I don't even know what that would mean. In reality, what does that mean? First shot.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just meant more like I'd like this guy in your organization. So I'm coming to you if you're interested in this guy who I've got. I'm willing to let go, but I want such and such from your organization.
Danny, if you were a GM in the National League, I'd still be a GM.
Hey, Ned, what's the fastest a deal's ever come together?
That's a good one. Yeah.
My fastest was probably Manny Ramirez.
Wow.
It came together in 5 hours.
Who was who's on the other end? Is that Theo?
Theo, yeah.
And can you give us some indication on how that went?
He had asked me about Andy LaRoche for like a month. And I'm thinking
third baseman, prospect.
Yeah, he's got Mike Lowell and I think Kevin Youkilis over there who could both play third base.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, he needs Andy for some other purpose than the Red Sox. So he calls me on July 30th. I'm sitting at my desk. We got a 7-10 game. It's 10-10 in Boston. And I'm sitting there. It's about 6:30, 9:30 in Boston. I'm watching the game. And on the bottom line, it says a report of Manny Ramirez being traded to Florida. Pittsburgh trading Jason Bay to Boston, and the Pirates getting prospects from both Boston and Florida. And so I'm talking to Theo as I'm watching this, and he's asking me about Andy LaRoche, and he was offering me back a 4A pitcher. Andy LaRoche touched the big leagues for a little while, but never lived up to the potential that people thought he could be.
But he did have at once upon a time, Andy LaRoche was somewhat coveted within the game.
He was on one of those lists of people who don't have to live with the decision of that list.
Right,
They're
right.
just writing stuff.
He was a brother of somebody too, right?
Yeah, he was a brother of a pretty good first baseman named.
Yeah.
And Adam could play a bit.
That's right.
Well, anyway, I'm watching the thing. I'm talking to Theo, and I said, "Oh, looks like you're going to move Manny," because Manny had started to be trouble in the clubhouse, and there was a bunch of stuff. We were aware of it, and Manny's a very sharp guy, and he was trying to get out because he had a no trade clause. He could negotiate and get something back. They had 2 option years to go. So he couldn't go anywhere. As salaries rose, he was going to be stuck there for maybe 2 more years. So caused some anarchy. Okay. And so I said, well, I see you get Manny moved. He goes, I don't think so. Now, I've known Theo since he worked in San Diego. He started out like, an entry-level position for Kevin Towers. Really smart.
The late Kevin Towers, great guy.
Great guy.
From Napa, by the way, great guy.
And, I knew Theo, and I could tell the tone of his voice. He said, I don't know if that's happening. And I thought, let it go. And didn't say nothing, just let it go. And I said, well, I'm not moving Andy in that deal. Okay, boom, we hang up. After the game, I go downstairs to see Joe Torre. I had one other thing working a little bit for Greg Maddux. This is in 2008. And I had been with Greg when he was drafted in his first 6 years in the big leagues. I had traded for him in 2006. He went to San Diego after he left us. And then here it comes 2008. And we were in a position where we weren't taking on any money. I had a chance to get CC Sabathia, who ended up going to Milwaukee. This is incredible. I mean, this was my low point and my high point all within about 2 weeks. And the low point came in San Francisco. I'll get back to Manny in a minute if I can tell you the story about the no money.
Please do.
We had no money. I couldn't spend any money on anybody. I thought I had a deal, and you could look this up. The Dodgers were playing at San Francisco, weekend series. It was a early Saturday game, maybe 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. It was an early game. And that day, I thought I was on the 5-yard line and making a deal for CC Sabathia, Casey Blake to play third base because Nomar was out, and Jamie Carroll, who could play all over the infield, because I also had Furcal out. And I had a 500 team that I thought could win if we shored up the infield and added somebody at the beginning of a rotation. And I called Joe, and I said, this is where I'm at. I need your support today, because ownership was coming in to see the game. And I'm down in the visiting manager's office at, I guess it was, maybe, I don't know if it was Pac Bell then or SBC or AT&T, whatever, it was the same ballpark.
Right.
And I'm sitting with Joe, and Joe said, you make that deal, we can win. I said, well, we got to get ownership to go for it. Ownership comes in, I lay it out. I was giving up 5 prospects, but trust me, they weren't going to be prospects in the city of Los Angeles. Expectations were too high for 4 of the 5.
Was like Ruby De La Rosa maybe one of those, or no, different?
Yeah,
different.
That came later. That
Okay.
was 4 years down the road.
Okay.
Carlos Santana was the one player in the deal.
Mm.
And we had a young catcher, you may have heard of him, named Russell Martin.
Yeah.
Okay.
From Canada, and
All-star.
Great makeup.
Young guy. I mean, he was like 25 years old at the time. Carlos was a really good hitter. We didn't think he was going to be a catcher for very long. We had no DH. If you look at his career, he's had a great career, but he played a lot of first base and he played a lot of catcher, a lot of DH. So ownership tells me we're not going to spend any money. Get them to give you the players for nothing, or trade Derek Lowe. I said, well, trading Derek Lowe is not the answer if we're trying to build a rotation. And Cleveland is not in a position where they're going to be taking on salaries. I'd have to find a place to move Derek Lowe besides Cleveland. That's not going to work. So I go up, press level at the ballpark, place I knew intimately. We talked on the last show, I think, about watching. No, I talked to FP yesterday about watching Pac Bell come out of the ground.
Right. I heard that was a great segment, by the way.
And I'm back in a little alcove that I knew where it was, where nobody would bother me, not in the press box, behind it. And I made the call to Chris Antonetti. And I said, I got a problem with the money. And he goes, well, I got another team that'll take CC right now and all the money. It was Milwaukee. He goes, we'd rather do your deal, but we're not taking on Derek Lowe. We're not taking on any money. We got CC Sabathia here, and you're getting Casey Blake and Jamie Carroll too. But that was what that was what I had. I had no money. So that deal goes away, and you can look this up. CC Sabathia gets traded on a Monday. This was a Saturday. This was 48 hours before. I had a chance to get all three. It would have cost us between probably $4 and $5 million. So this is midway, to your point again, Larry, midway through July. This is early. Look when, Danny, if you got a computer, look up when CC Sabathia was traded. It wasn't July 31st. And then look at what he did for Milwaukee. It was like 8-1 or 9.
Yeah.
What year was that? 08? 08.
So now I go back to Theo. Okay. And I did get Casey Blake from Chris, and he paid all the money, but it cost me the best player I had offered him in the other deal, Carlos Santana. So I traded him Santana, pitcher named John Malone, and for Casey Blake and $2.5 million. Okay. So now here's Theo. And I pick that story up. We play our game. I go down, I see Joe. All I had going was Maddox and Kevin Towers, who I was dear friends with, even though we competed against each other for 20 years. He would trade me Maddox. He's trying to do right by Greg. But I'm telling him, you got to send me Maddox and $2.5 million. He goes, the little Padres, I can remember him saying it like it was yesterday. The little Padres are supposed to trade the big bad Dodgers, Greg Maddox, and give you $2.5 million to take them. He goes, we're buddies, but we're not, to your point a couple minutes ago, Danny, we're buddies, but that's ridiculous. And so I went down to see Joe, and I said, I still got Maddox perhaps down the road, but we got to wait for the money to be less, because I can't spend a dime. I said, but let me ask you something. I said, this is just intuitively, Joe. What if I could get Manny Ramirez? And Theo hadn't offered him. I told you exactly how the conversation had gone. I said, oh, it looks like you're moving him. I'm not sure. And that's where that ended at 7 o'clock Pacific. So I go back to, the South Bay where I'm living. That night is like, you sleep 2 hours, 3 hours. I actually, I wore cowboy boots all the time, right? For like 25 years. I actually fell asleep. I was fortunate to set my alarm for like 4:30 in the morning. Got there about 1. I fell asleep and slept in my boots. I mean, I was worn out. Slept in the boots. The alarm goes off. I look at my phone, and as soon as I shut the phone off, the alarm, I get a text from Theo. Call me as soon as you can. Boom. Call him. What's up? And he goes, it's now 7 o'clock in Boston, 7:30 in the morning. And we got a 1 o'clock Pacific deadline. And he says, would you want Manny? And I said, I'll tell you two things. We take Manny. The Joe conversation, Joe said, I take Manny in a heartbeat. I managed him in the All-Star games. I've managed against him all these years. This was Joe's first year leaving the Yankees.
Oh, he knew Manny well. He faced him a lot.
He says he's a little bit of a different character, but
one of the greatest right-handed hitters of all time.
Yes, he would really help our club. So I left it there because I had no idea. But at 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm not going to be calling Joe up to wake Joe up and say, "Hey, Joe, what about Manny?" I needed to set some of this up ahead of time, just in case. Well, just in case happened. And he says, do you have interest in Manny? I said, I tell you two things. We would have interest in Manny, but you're going to have to pay $7.5 million. That's what he was owed. And he goes, I got to pay the entire thing. I said, Theo, I'm not using this as a negotiation ploy. I said, if I had money, I'd have Casey Blake, Jamie Carroll, and CeCe Sabathia sitting here right now, and Greg Maddux. But I have no money. So I'm not, he goes, okay, I got it. So start driving in. He calls me. I'm on 110 driving up to the stadium. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. He calls me and he says, if we were to pay half, would you do it? And I said, Theo, we've known each other for a while. I don't have any money. I don't have $1. Okay. So neither one of us have the time to waste today on this. And unless you call me back and tell me you're taking all the money, we can't waste time doing this, you or me. I get to the stadium, Theo. He goes, we'll take all the money. And we need Andy LaRoche and we need somebody else. I said,
Brian Morris, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Brian Morris, Andy LaRoche. I'm looking at the deal now. July 31st, 2008.
Yeah, that other deal was July 7th, by the way, on CC.
There you go. And look on July 4th or 5th, Danny, if the Dodgers were playing in San Francisco, just to verify all the timeline here.
And that kicked off Mannywood. He was the NL Player of the Month in August, right?
He changed the entire franchise. So to finish off that deal, Frank McCourt walks by, owner, and I go, Frank, I said, I got something here that might be interesting. And he says, what? I said, I got a chance to get Manny Ramirez. And Frank was from Boston. He was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Manny Ramirez. I says, yeah. He said, but we got no money. I said, I've told Theo we got no money. And Theo's working with his ownership. But what I told Theo is John Henry and Larry Lucchino need to call Frank McCourt and tell them they will do this for no money. Because I'm not going to get Frank McCourt involved in this thing if it's, if the deal's going to change. And so we all get on the phone and they say, we'll pay all the money to move him and get him out of here. And then Theo says, what else? I need another player. I said, you've been asking me about Andy for a month. Where you sending Andy? And he says to Pittsburgh. And I said, Pittsburgh's asked me about James McDonald and Brian Morris. I said, I'll work with Neil to figure out which one of those two guys. But you're going to pay Manny. You're going to take, we're going to get Manny. You're going to pay all the salary. And we're going to get Brian. We're going to trade two guys to Pittsburgh, Andy being one of them. And he goes, yeah. I said, you go work on whatever else you got to work on. We'll work on this. So now we're coming down to like 1:15, the deadline. And the rule back then, I'm not sure what it may be the same rule today, is you needed, if you had a deal where some team was getting more than $2 million, the commissioner's office had to approve it. So we're running up against the deadline. And we get a conference call with Neil and Frank Coonley, who was the president of Pirates, Theo and either Larry or John Henry, or maybe both, and Frank and I, with Rob Manford, who was not the commissioner at the time, but he was Commissioner Selig's right-hand person. And he says, my recollection is, he says, okay, Ned, why don't you start? Why don't you start and lay out who you're getting and who you're trading? And I said, we are acquiring Manny Ramirez. The Boston Red Sox are paying every dollar of the remaining contract. And we are trading Brian Morris and Andy LaRoche. Theo, what are you doing? I'm trading Manny Ramirez and all the money to LA. I'm acquiring Jason Bay and maybe Eric Hansen. Maybe I don't have the trade in front of me.
It was Ramirez was traded to the Dodgers, 3-way deal. Red Sox acquired Jason Bay and minor league infielder Josh Wilson, and the Pirates got Andy LaRoche and Brian Morris from the Dodgers, and outfielder Brandon Moss and pitcher Craig Hansen from the Red Sox.
Yes, and so then Pittsburgh says, we're trading Jason Bay and the minor league player, his name, and then we're getting these 4 prospects back. And this is like a minute to 1. And Frank says, okay, commissioners blessed the deal. And the money changing hands. And so we had a deal. But one of the funny pieces to it is this is happening right at 1:00. And I'm in the room only with Frank. My top scouts, Kim, Vance Lovelace, Dijon Watson, Rick Ragazzo, Logan White, they knew we were getting close, but they weren't sitting in the room with us. And so they're all watching, MLB Network or ESPN or something, and everybody's saying, "Oh, Manny didn't get traded. Manny didn't get traded." And so I told Theo before you announced this, and I told Neil, we've got to get a hold of the players that are moving. You got to get a hold of Manny, tell him. I got to get a hold of Andy and Brian and let them know. I don't want anybody Twitter wasn't around. I didn't want anybody finding out from anybody but us. So it took me like a half hour to get a hold of Andy and get a hold of Brian Morris. I told them. So one of the funny stories is Mitch Poole, who's the clubhouse guy for the Dodgers for a million years, told Tommy Lasorda that Kirk Gibson could pinch hit that night against.
Oh, right.
So Mitch gets a call. This is like 1:15. He has no idea what we've done. Nobody does because we haven't announced it. And he gets a call from the clubhouse guy with the Red Sox. And he goes, "Mitch, let me give you Manny's hat size, bat size and weight and shoe size and this and that." Mitch goes, "Who?"
Manny.
And he goes, "Manny Ramirez." He goes, "What are you calling me for? We got no money. We're trying to make it here with no money." And the guy says, "You just got Manny Ramirez." And Mitch didn't hang up on him, but he thought it was a prank. And so then, we announced the deal, and it changed the entire culture of our organization. We went on to play in the LCS and almost won the LCS against Philly.
Oh man, and Manny Wood. I mean, look how it touched
Wood
off Manny Wood. What would you have said if Manny, who was a little flaky, had said, "I got to have 24"? That was Walter Alston's number.
He did.
Did he?
He did.
He wanted He wanted Walter Alston's number.
He came in August 1st. Obviously, he's in Boston on July 31st. He calls me that night, and he always called me Poppy. "Hey, Poppy, what number do I get to wear?" I said, "Well, what number do you want?" He goes, "Well, 24." I says, "You can't. It's retired." "Who?" I said, "Walter Alston." Who's Walter Alston? I said, I didn't expect Manny to know, but yeah.
So he took 99 instead.
And we went through all sorts of numbers, and then he thought about Manny Noda. We went through like 6 or 7 different numbers that he thought, well, this should be a cool number. 24, turn around, 42.
That's retired.
None of it worked. And I finally said, "Manny, how about 99? He goes, "Hey man, that's cool."
That's cool.
And what we had to do, because he had the no trade clause, is we had to agree not to pick up the options. Because remember, he had the 2 options, which is why he was trying to force his way out of Boston. So he got what he wanted. He helped us. He helped us tremendously. And change the entire direction of the franchise.
Well, and then he signed a 2-year, $45 million contract to stay with you guys.
Positive 5 weeks into it.
Oh,
yeah, it was never the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The female fertility drug or whatever.
Yeah. So that's it. That's probably a 45-minute answer to your question. So what was the quickest deal?
And I did check your dates of July that you asked. It was late July, so your whole story is completely fabricated. No, it was July 4th, 5th, 6th. I'm kidding you. Yeah. I got you back.
No, you didn't get me back. You still bullshitted me there. I called you. I know where I was.
Great. Yeah, it was the 4th, Friday night, and then Saturday the 5th, and Sunday the 6th.
That's right.
Hey, it's 12:15, so I'm gonna let everybody get on with their night. Our good buddy MF in the chat says, "Does Ned still talk to Sabes?"
I talk to Sabes probably. It depends what year it is. I've talked to him every month in the last 3 or 4 years. I've talked to him probably 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit less. But dear friends, he was in one of my classes last fall. I teach a class at Pepperdine on organizational sport culture, how some teams, organizations can build something that will go on, and the players change. So I got Boch, Saves, and Walt Jocketty all at the same time.
Wow.
And 3 days later, Boch went to Texas. So it was classic. I mean, Saves and I are like brothers, and will always be. I'll say one more thing about the relationship and the story. I did the GM thing for 9 years. I think in 8 of the 9, either the Giants were really good and we were behind, or we were really good and the Giants were behind. There was 1 year where we went neck to neck and we beat them out at the end. Okay. Might have been 13 or 14.
13. Yeah.
But
Maybe
we
13.
went almost down to the
Or
wire.
14 too. Yeah. They were the wild card. Yeah.
So that year, whenever they came to LA, he would seek me out to say hello, and we'd sit and talk privately for a half hour. Or when I came to San Fran, I knew where he was, and we'd sit and talk for a half hour, and reminisce and talk about different things going on in the game. And that year that we were neck and neck, neither one of us sought the other one out. We didn't talk the entire season. And it wasn't by design. It's just neither one of us. I don't want to call him and tell him I'm not talking to you, and he don't want to call me and tell me I'm not talking to you. We just refused to speak to each other because we weren't the kind of people that were going to say, "Hey, good luck, Saves," or "Hey, Ned, I wish you all the best." No, he wished me no luck.
Right.
I wished him no luck. And so we went the entire season without seeing each other, talking to each other. And then when we beat him, the next, either that night or the next morning, he called me and said, "Well, now I can talk to you. Congratulations, you beat us out." We won 5 divisions in 9 years.
Oh, you guys are great friends, but also great competitors. Mark Hope says, "Gentlemen, awesome to see you guys. I just got off my security shift in downtown San Francisco. I rewatched the rest later." And then Kyle,
be careful, brother.
Kyle says, "Ned, your story about the bullpens when the park was being built is insane. I was listening to you and FP last night. How short of a story is that? Can you share it with us? Because I didn't hear it."
We were talking FP. We had great show. We didn't even get to talk about the Dodgers and the Giants.
I heard that someone said Ned was on with FP, and they didn't even talk baseball at any point.
We talked about the ballpark, and we talked about Kirk Reeder. And I had some great Woody stories, and he had just seen him in St. Louis. So Saves and I would go down in the wintertime. We would drive by 3rd and King, when we knew we were going to do it, or even as it was coming close. And, it was a warehouse, and it was like a van parked there, laying there, and then here it comes out of the ground little by little in the wintertime, right? And Saves and I would go down there maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, leave Candlestick Park, drive down there. It was dark out probably by the time we got down there for the spring training and the time zone, the clocks change. And we saw the thing come out of the ground, and we saw the skeleton of the ballpark. I can remember one time being up in the upper deck, and there were no seats or nothing. It was just platforms. We had hard hats on, and we're just looking at this place with the base sitting out there. I mean, it's just gorgeous, right? With this massive hill of dirt sitting at second base. Not sure what that was. It wasn't a pitcher's mound. I don't know if they had to remove that some other way or whatever, but it was kind of weird seeing. But we're doing all this stuff. So now we go to spring training, 1st of February, 5th of February, whatever. And, ownership was great, kept us abreast of it. Ownership did a phenomenal job building it, and, no funds from anybody but their own pockets and
privately funded stadium, no city involvement.
Unbelievable. It was one of the great stories in the history of sport in the country, I think. And so we get to spring training, and we're seeing plans, this and that. So it's probably around St. Patrick's Day. It's like 2 weeks to go or something. And so the plans are laid out, and we're looking at them and this and that. And, this is going to be so cool.
Where are the bullpens going?
I forget who says it. It was Saves and myself. We go, "What about the bullpens?" And the room went quiet.
Nobody thought of it.
And it was like, yeah, we'll have to figure that out. So, they figured it out and put them down the line like Wrigley Field did. until a couple of years ago. But yeah, it was phenomenal. Then we came back, played the Yankees in a few games.
I was there. I interviewed Joe Torre behind home plate.
Yep.
Before that there was one game against New York and one game against Milwaukee, and then it was the Kevin Elster show on opening day with 3 home runs.
Yes.
And I walked out of that ballpark going, this place is a bandbox.
I think we had a 6-game homestand and lost 5 and got rained out in the 6th.
Yeah. The Giants started 0-6 in the park.
Yeah. Well, I think we got rained out on the Sunday night. We started maybe on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday against LA, and we lost Friday, Saturday, whoever else came in. And I think Sunday got rained out. When we came back on it, we lost another one.
And then rampage from that point on, because you guys had an awesome home record that year. And I can still remember the sunny playoff day game where Ellis Burks hit one down the left field line for a home run. And I'm thinking, man, the Giants are going to take down the Mets. Then it was the Benny Agbayani 13-inning game.
I still remember the JT Snow home run.
How about the Bobby Jones one-hitter? Bobby Jones one-hitter. And I'll never forget that. It was called Restaurant 24, right? I did my show from there. And it was the second game of the series, and the Mets had won 50 games that year at home. And I remember the Giants lost, and the way I would get after the Giants lost, especially in the playoffs, very fatalistic. I'm like, they're done. They're absolutely done. They're not coming back. The series is over. And this was like a Thursday night. And that Saturday morning, Bruce Jenkins, who had the 3 Dot Lounge, writes this: Larry Krueger on KNBR informed the drive home crowd Thursday night that the Giants are done. And it was like and then he's like ripping me left and right. And he's like, ridiculous take. And I saw that. And before I could even get back on the air to confront it, Bobby Jones one-hitter, series over, season over. And that was a very painful. 2000 was very painful because the team that you guys built that year had a true American League type lineup. You had Bonds and Kent and Burks. And Burks, I think JT and Richie and everybody. I mean, but you had the 3-4-5 that year, and I can remember that team. That team had a rough. Dusty insisted on leading off Marvin Bernard, and the team didn't. That year more than any other year I can remember. You could literally go away from your seats at the top of the lineup and the bottom of the lineup because all of the damage was done in the middle of the lineup with Bonds and Burks and Kent. And it was an incredible middle of the lineup. But, man, I mean, the Agbayani thing was a crusher. And then it ended, and it was just a bitter defeat. And there was some tough years there. I mean, that was 2000.
From 97 to 2003, the Giants were the best team in baseball that didn't win a World Series.
Well, that was 2000, and the Giants won, I think, 97 games that year, something like that. And then 2001 was the unbelievable. Eric Young was you guys traded for Eric Young, left him off the playoff roster against the Marlins.
That was 03.
Oh, that was 03. So what, 01, you guys lost the division by 2 games, maybe?
Yeah, we got
the Diamondbacks. That was the Diamondback year.
Barry hit 73.
Yep.
And we got eliminated the night he broke the record. The night he went 71 off Chan Ho.
Very weird game, too. It lasted forever.
Oh, yeah.
And then 2002, you guys, I can remember talking to you a lot that offseason. You brought in Ray Durham. You brought in Reggie Sanders. You really had a great free agent offseason going into that 2002 season. And we all know what happened in 2002. And it was like
one of my dear friends is Tim Mead with the Angels.
And
I actually went to an Angel Cub game at Anaheim Stadium about 10 days ago. And I hate walking in that place. I just can't stand it. Ted, they're talking about Reggie Sanders. I went to the Rose Bowl, the 01 or 02 Rose Bowl, and I was talking to his agent, Eric Goldschmidt, while I was, before the game and a little bit during the game. And I was driving up 5 afterwards. And I think cell phones may have started. I don't know, but it wasn't like it is today. So I had to know all the stops on 5 all the way up to the East Bay where payphones could be found, including Las Banos. Okay. So I called Eric Goldschmidt like every 45 minutes to continue to negotiate this deal off of payphones. And we finally got the deal done. And as I was near the San Mateo Bridge coming back to the San Mateo where I lived, and got a deal done. Well, I had to get a letter of agreement done. So I went to a Kinko's in San Mateo and used their computer, printed it out, faxed it to Eric. Eric signed it and faxed it back. That's my Reggie Sanders story. I signed him driving up Highway 5, including Las Banos.
I remember talking to you the morning that you signed Ray Durham. I remember how fired up I was that you guys had gotten Ray Durham. Yeah, there were some good days there. Paul says, did Ned and Brian get mad at Larry after he ripped them for not putting Eric Young on the playoff roster in 03? That was my only real ever complaint of Sabes was the 03 playoff roster where the Marlins had Hollingsworth and Pierre, the only lefties, and you guys had Fultz and I think Zerby maybe or Christensen. I forget. You had 3 lefties, and Eric Young got left off the playoff roster. And I remember saying to you, what happened here? And you guys were like, well, hey, we couldn't decide which lefty we wanted to keep on our playoff roster. We kept all of them. And then Eric Young wasn't on the roster. JT Snow got pinch, there was no pinch runner for JT. JT is very quick, but not fast footed. And then he got hosed out by Pudge at the play, or, at the plate with Pudge in 03. That was a very, very good Giant team in 03. That was Felipe's first year. He did a masterful job managing, I thought, that year. And that team won 100 games. That was a tremendous baseball team with Jose Cruz and a lot of good players.
I can remember, sadly, sitting in the conference room, which was between the manager's office. It was adjacent to the manager's office, adjacent to the coach's office, and across the hall from Sabes' office. And we went in there to put together the postseason roster and debated rather than argued, debated on this topic for a long, long time and acquiesced to the extra pitcher and sat there together and watched that play and just looked at each other,
Yeah.
There was a lot of it was probably 50-50 as far as who, the votes in the room. But, you take the lead of the people that have got to run the game.
Right.
That's what we did.
Last thought on this. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show you something that to me is very impressive. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share the screen. And I've got this one printout here. Here we go. And I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, there it is.
Blow it up a little.
What we're looking at there. And, this is a great night to bring this up. This
2020 draft.
This is the Farhan Zaidi 2020 amateur draft.
Yeah,
round 1, Patrick Bailey. Round 2, Casey Schmidt. Round 3, supplemental pick, Nick Swiney, who's still a top young pitcher in their system. Jimmy Glowenke. Round 3, Kyle Harrison. RJ Dabovich is a top prospect. Ryan Murphy's a top prospect. That ain't bad right there. That's Bailey, Schmidt, and Harrison.
That's
3 of their top 5 picks.
You know what? As I glance at that, what I also see.
What's that?
Anybody else see anything in that?
All college, except for high school.
All but Harrison were college picks.
Yeah. And Harrison was a pick that would have been a first-round pick, but they actually went beneath slot on Bailey so they could buy Harrison out of the UCLA commitment.
Yeah, that was
a strategic move.
That tells me they were looking for players who were closer to the big leagues, who were, weren't kids, they were men type of thing,
Yeah.
You're talking about 21-year-olds instead of 18-year-olds. And so, but that's probably as good as I've seen.
Yeah.
And again, we got miles to go, but the first at first look, that's pretty good. When did Matos
Mat-
sign?
Matos.
Matos was 18 or 17 with Bobby Evans.
Okay.
Came out of him and Luciano international signings. I think it was 17. Pretty sure.
It's funny too. Matos is just, they also had Alexander Canario, who they moved to the Cubs for Chris Bryant, another guy with a lot of bat speed. But Matos, had struggled in the minor leagues a little bit as far as the last couple of years, and this year busted out. And what a performance tonight! 3 walks.
Actually, Matos, Larry, I was looking at his stats the other night because I talked to him in the fall league. He was hurting last year with a quad injury. Every year in the minors except last year, he's hit over 300. This is a 300 guy hitter, and he was hitting 400 down in AAA with an OPS of like 1,100. The guy was just raking, and he had, which was amazing to me, his time in AA and AAA combined stats, he had a little bit more walks, I believe, than strikeouts. Real close, and the strikeouts were like very minimal, like less than 10%. So he turned
young
it
player.
around.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Can I finish off with a quick little story here?
Yeah, please do.
All right, I'm friends with the guys that are in the band Chicago, back from my youth.
Peter Cetera?
Not
Really?
Peter Cetera, Robert Lamb.
That was my favorite group growing up. That was my song, Ned, that I drove to my high school basketball game. I
What
put
song?
on Feeling Stronger every day.
There you go. So they have two younger guys that are not necessarily young guys, but 2 younger guys that are in the group. One is Ray Islis, who is a percussionist, huge Dodger fan. The other guy is the second keyboard guy, Lauren Gold. Okay. And Lauren Gold also plays with the Who. Okay. He's a massive Giants fan. So whenever I see these guys, they go back and forth, Dodgers, Giants, they play in the same band together.
Right.
Well, the Who's in Europe. And Lauren was in Barcelona a couple of days ago, and now he's in Florence, Italy. We were talking earlier today, texting back and forth about the series, how cool it was going to be. So tonight, he's sleeping. It's the middle of the night in Italy tonight, right? And so I'm texting back and forth with Ray. We talked about it for 45 minutes, the back and forth of this game. And I'm kind of refereeing Ray, without Lauren being, he's asleep. So Ray's got all these comments, and I've got all these comments back and forth. So just a minute ago, I get this note from Lauren Green, the Giants fan who woke up in Florence, Italy, and saw the score and saw how it all played out. And he says, this is what he writes. He goes, "Did you guys enjoy all that smack talk between yourselves while I slept so nicely? And we didn't even use one of our starters last night. Sleep well, boys. Ray, your Dodgers are in for a tough time." That is priceless.
John Boitnot says, "I love Ned's story about Sinatra was a Giants fan, not a Dodger fan, and how that was too hard for Lasorda to hear, so he kicked Ned and Brian out of the booth." Seriously, I mean, when you told that story, and it's just phenomenal. Is that story in the book, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
And Sage was, I knew Sage.
You couldn't have told me that earlier, right? You couldn't
have wanted no part of being in that booth. And he didn't say a word for an hour. We finally got kicked out after I told Tommy the story. And he says, "You couldn't have told that story an hour ago." Yeah.
By the way, Ned, have you seen the Uncivil War documentary?
No.
Oh, it's about the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And Yankees.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that Garvey and Sutton brawled, and that, and it's funny. I always thought of the Dodgers as, man, they're so united. It's because it was Garvey and Lopes and Russell and Say. But then now this Uncivil War, where it basically goes behind the scenes on the Yankees of the 70s, behind the scenes on the Dodgers of the 70s. It's pretty clear that even though the Dodgers were thought of as, hey, they all came up together with Lasorda, and they all, if you remember that era, when they hit a home run, sort of hugged Dusty, and he hugged Monday, and he hugged Reggie.
Yes.
There's a lot of hugging going on.
Yes.
And I remember how annoyed I used to be watching them hug all the time. But it's funny how Lopes hated Garvey hated Sutton hated Say. You know, I mean, it's just it's great. It's a phenomenal couple hours.
I gotta watch that.
It's really good. It's a lot of Billy Martin and Steinbrenner. But heck, you would probably enjoy that too, because I'm sure Sabes has told all kinds of stories about Steinbrenner and working in New York, and just glimpses of Dodgers, Yankees, 76 World Series or 77 World Series, 78 World Series, 81 World Series.
Well, those Dodgers hating on each other. Some of them hating. I hated them all.
There you go.
They were, but that was one hell of an infield, man. When you had Garvey, Lopes, Bill Russell,
Yeager. It was an incredible team.
And Joe Ferguson was also
five guys with 30 bombs.
And Ben was a Giants fan growing up.
I will say this: one of my favorite memories. People say, "Hey, do you have a memory of covering sports that's really dear to you?" And I do. And you were actually part of this memory. This was I think it was the last year at Candlestick. I had you on the show with Chris Townsend on the KMBR Weekend Insiders. We're in the bowels of Candlestick, right by the Players parking lot. And you're like, "Hey, I really like being on the show. And, if you guys want me again, let me know." And we're like, "Oh, that's awesome. He's the Giants assistant GM and he's come on. He wants to come on with us." So we're feeling really good. We go into the Dodger clubhouse, and Vin walks in wearing a seersucker suit, right? He's got just ridiculous blue light suit and everything. And Vin was in his, absolute prime, right? I mean, his prime lasted forever, but he was still very much on top of his game. And he walks in and he understood who he was as an ambassador for the game better than almost anybody. And here's young Chris Townsend, young Larry Krueger, we're like in our 20s. And we see Vin in the clubhouse. We're like, "Mr. Scully, we'd love to have you on our show." And he's like, "Well, gentlemen, I'd love to be on your show." We're like, "Wow." And we had a DAT recorder, and we're like, "Why don't we do it right now?" And he sat down with us in the Dodger clubhouse and gave us the most incredible interview. And he's like, "Well, first of all, gentlemen, I want to tell you, I grew up in New York City as a Giants fan." And
a Giants fan.
Yeah, and the way his delivery, his speech, everything, his optimism, his enthusiasm for the game, his love of the rivalry, his love of telling the story, Vin was golden, man, absolutely golden. And he gave us like a 20-minute interview. We didn't know any better to not take 20 minutes of his time when he just got to the ballpark at 3:30 or whatever. And he gave us just this most incredible interview, and it was just an amazing day at the ballpark. And I remember it was like, I can remember like it was yesterday. He gives us this incredible interview, and thanks us for our time at the end of the interview. Thanks us for our time. So now we're sky high. We look into the clubhouse. We're like, let's go into the clubhouse. We go into the clubhouse. We see Paul Konerko. I think it was like 98, 99. Interview Paul Konerko. And he had just been called up from A-ball, and he was all excited to be there. We're talking to Paul Konerko. Literally, we have this great interview with Vin, great interview, conversation with you, great interview with Paul Konerko. We go to play the interview in the pregame. We play all three interviews in the pregame. And right before first pitch, the Dodgers trade Konerko.
Oh, yeah.
They traded Konerko. And you remember Candlestick at the time.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the dugout. So now, literally, in the first inning, between the top of the first and the bottom of the first, he walks with all the way down the right field line. He got traded for Jeff Shaw.
Yes.
That day.
And Jeff Shaw, I think, had a no trade that nobody knew he had.
And we're sitting there going, how could they trade Konerko? He's this awesome right-handed power hitter. And sure enough, he goes to Chicago, and I think he went to Cincinnati in the trade.
Yes.
But then eventually, he winds up on the White Sox. But it was just a great moment. That day, being in that environment, and I was 27 or whatever. I was just getting started on the radio, and to do an interview with Vin Scully. And I remember our boss, Bob Agnew, at the time, calls me at home on a Saturday night, and he's like, Krueger, it's Bob Agnew. I'm like, oh, yeah. How you doing, Mr. Agnew? What's going on? He goes, I just wanted to say to you. And I'm like, and he pauses. I'm like, what? He's like, that was a great fucking interview that you guys did today with Vin Scully. He's like, you guys don't even know that you're not supposed to get interviews like that. And he's like, you guys are so young, you don't even know what you don't even know. He's like all mad at us. But he's like, that was incredible. And Salvador called me. He said, those weekend guys that you got just got Vin Scully for 25 minutes. And just, incredible.
And I lived
great memories
in Southern California from 82 till 95. And I used to drive to Glendale from Ontario in the car during about 7. I worked, my shift work. I was working at Ralph's Grocery Warehouse off of the 134 freeway and near the 5. And I'm driving and I'm listening to the Dodgers games every night. I love that drive just because I could listen to Vin tell all these stories,
on K-Dawn, right? It was like K-Dawn, like
no,
you could hear.
It was on. They were on 5. Was it no
590? The mighty 590, mighty 690.
They were on 790 at that time. 790.
I think that was a Vegas station. Yeah, but in the Dodgers, you could hear them on the West Coast. You could hear them at night. You could hear them in San Francisco.
Farmer John hot dogs. just how he did that draw, just like
incredible.
And now batting for the Dodgers, Steve Sachs. And then I remember when Sachs went through that horrible
throwing
psychological thing where he couldn't throw, and Vinny was just talk about it, and he says, the poor kid, he's just got a mental something, and he says, but just his story.
No, but Vin was amazing. Vin told us the story of I couldn't believe this. He told us the story of the shot heard around the world.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's like, and then, and in came Ralph Branca and the pitcher, the Dodger star pitcher who got taken out for Branca, Newcomb, walked out to center field. He walked out to center field because that's where the clubhouse was at Polo Grounds. And then, and Vince telling the story and Branca, I walked in and Branca's laying on the stairs, face down, and he wouldn't get up. And oh my God. I mean, just Vin. Vin
was another one like
my last name. I don't know nobody in the world better than Vin. Nicer gentleman, just classic.
Seriously, and
share my last name. Nobody better in my world.
I mean, the Dodgers had Jaime Herrera for forever, and Vin. I mean, it's great stuff. Ned, I'm going to let you go, man. It's 12:45 in the morning, man. But awesome show, awesome. Jeffrey Bond says this is the best show in the history of YouTube. And anytime we can get Ned telling stories about ball, it's great stuff. And this was an all-time night, man. It was a fun night. And you know what tonight was? It was an advertisement to watch Giants Dodgers tomorrow and Sunday. Because suddenly the Giants went from kind of forgettable and sleepy at the beginning of the year to kind of must-watch TV. And I think the rest of this summer could be one for the ages. It really could.
They remind me so much of the teams when I was in Chicago and the teams of Robbie Thompson and Matty Williams and those guys, how hard they played. Kurt Manwaring, all that crew. And then the teams that we had in the late 90s and early 2000s that just had that grit to them.
Yep.
We would be flying to L.A., and we had a payroll of 50. They had a payroll of 80. They had Kevin Brown for $100 million. We had Woody for $3 million, in all these different scenarios. And you would hear the wheels come down as your plane was starting the approach into LAX. And the plane just started to pick up electricity from the players inside. Like they couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to get to LA to take it to them. That's part of the reason I got hired in LA. I think we beat the Dodgers 8 out of my last 9 years in San Fran. We beat the Dodgers. So they want to know what the recipe was. But anyway,
I'll tell you what I saw the other.
And I got to watch a game. The game's going to start in about 15 minutes.
I'll tell you what what they had on the other night. I couldn't believe it. they showed the Brian Johnson 97 home run. And I was in Boston for that 2-game series. I'll never forget it. Roberto Hernandez saved the night game. You guys had traded for him. That might have been his first appearance. Might have been one of his first appearances. He was awesome. That from the night game. You guys started that series, I think, dead tied. Giants won the night game. Giants won the day game on the Brian Johnson walk-off, and never looked back. The momentum shifted, and the Giants won the division in 97.
I think that night game, I think Barry hit a home run in the upper deck. Pulverized it way up in the upper deck, maybe off Chan Ho.
That was also the Rod Beck, bags loaded, nobody out, and then the Giants got out of it.
Eddie Murray.
Amazing story.
But we don't remember too much, do we?
Yeah. Great stuff, Ned. Hey, Ned, have a great night, man.
Okay. Maybe if you do something this week, Sunday, let me know.
Yeah, we'll definitely do something. We'll do it then.
See everybody. Have a good night.
See you, Ned.
The great Ned Colletti. Awesome. Danny, you got a final thought?
It's exciting to see.
We've had some great streams here the last. It last Friday night? It was me, you, and Carlo P and Eric, until Eric got tired of our stories and said, I gotta hang up.
Well, he was late.
This is the second Friday night in a row we've gone to 1 o'clock in the morning.
I know. I'll tell you, the thing that I love what's going on with the Giants right now. I was looking at this the other day and I was saying, the Giants were 7 under and they looked awful. They looked boring. They looked slow. And then all of a sudden Schmidt comes up, and then it's Bailey.
Shot in the arm. Bailey's been terrific. Bailey's just terrific.
Terrific. And then Matos, we're all excited about, hate to see guys get injured, but, Matos, and I'm just like, there's an energy that is coming. And then let's credit, even some of the other rookies. Sable's had a, pretty good year for a rookie, and he's added, a lot of, you see it in the dugout, when they're the guys, there's not that what they had before, just as, hey, good job. There's guys that are getting fired up, and I love seeing young guys that have some speed and know how to play the game. So
they're homegrown. And these are their guys. Like Vosler was not their guy. Papirski, not their guy. All those Michael Reed, Connor Joe, that parade of nothingness.
Yeah, that was we did a top 10 last night.
Those aren't their guys. These are their guys.
That was just like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's so enjoyable to watch. Why is it that we love to watch homegrown players more than I enjoy watching the homegrown prospects more than if the Giants had traded for stars on other teams. Why? Why is that?
I think it's because you hear about them coming up and you're excited about them, and you're kind of like, you want to see him succeed, because the other guys, especially in this Farhan era, that even the guys he signed, they're only here for a year or two and then they're gone. Like Conforto, loved Conforto, great guy, had a 25-minute interview with him this spring, fantastic.
I remember that.
Hope he sticks around, but he's likely to opt out after this year. And he's gone. You know
what? Well, also, not to interrupt you, what also jumped out today was listening to Kyle Haynes talk about Vaughn Brown.
Yeah, tool, he said.
Don't sleep on Vaughn Brown. He makes it sound like Vaughn Brown could be up. Where is Vaughn Brown? What's he doing right
Richmond. Now? He's in Richmond.
What's he doing, though? Is he doing okay?
He's doing okay.
Because Vaughn Brown might be another piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, imagine an outfield someday of Matos, Vaughn Brown, and say this McCray kid or something like that. He's
or Luciano, maybe Luciano.
Luciano could be a corner outfielder. Yeah, because if they get this hot shot shortstop who's supposed to be a really good fielding shortstop, Everson Ortega, is due in about 2 years. Let's say he comes up in 2 years and he becomes a shortstop. You put Schmidt at third. Where are you going to put Luciano? Left or right field, right?
Yeah. DH maybe.
Yeah, DH.
Maybe he's a big time hitter, or maybe he's the piece that gets you. Maybe he's a trade piece. They got so many different guys. Danny, I'll let you go. What do you got cooking this weekend on the channel? Ned says that he sounds like he'd be interested in joining on Sunday. What's the date? What are the times of the next 2 games?
6:00 tomorrow, 6:10 tomorrow, and 1 o'clock or 1:05 on.
So it's not the Sunday night baseball, huh?
No, it is. Let me pull it up right here. Okay. Yeah, 6:10 tomorrow, 1:10 Sunday.
Maybe Sunday afternoon. What do you think? Maybe you do a little Sunday afternoon.
I'll probably do my channel tomorrow night because
I'll join you.
Yeah,
Just
you wanna
send
join
me
me?
send me a text and maybe we
all right,
can.
everybody, NorCal Sports Network tomorrow about 9 o'clock after the Giants-Dodgers game.
Sounds good. Tomorrow morning, by the way, I'm going to sleep fast because tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., which is now just around the corner, Grant Cohn's going to join me for a little Niner live stream tomorrow at 10 a.m. on the Krueger Show channel right here. So tune in for that in the morning at 10 a.m. We'll talk about the state of the Niners and a bunch of different things on the Niner front. But Danny, fun night, man. Fun night. I'm glad you could join us, and it was awesome having Ned. And I my wife always, she's like, wow, it's like you got up this morning, you did a live stream with Jack Hammer at 11, then you drove into the city and did a 4-hour radio show with Mark Willard. And now you're coming home, you're going to watch this game, you're going to do another live stream with these guys. And I'm like, I go, this is kind of a labor of love, man. I mean, we're talking ball. I love talking with you. I love talking with Ned. My whole thing, the reason I haven't done more with the Giants is just that I did so much on the Niners and the draft and this and that I was a little burned out by the Giants. I was a little disillusioned at the beginning of the year, but I think tonight's win kind of lights my pilot light. I think I'm going to be doing Giants on the regular, and I'm more than happy to maybe co-brand. And try to drive as many people as we can to the NorCal Sports Network channel. So help you grow that thing the rest of this summer. And we'll use Ned liberally for more breakdown. And you know what? We didn't get Farhan tonight. We were hoping to get Farhan, but we'll get him. We'll get him on here, and really look forward to it. So
yeah, I was going to text you. It was a couple nights ago. I can't remember what it was. It was something good that came up, and it was about 1 a.m, and I'm like, I think I'll hold off because I don't want to.
You can text me anytime. Text me anytime.
I didn't want your wife to who's texting you?
Who the hell is that? Who's Averson Artiega? And what's
oh man.
All right, Danny.
I'm looking forward to on my channel. I've got some new things I figured out, and I because I'm pretty small, I take a little risk here playing some stuff, so I have some fun with it. But
we'll have a lot of fun this summer. Eddie K says, "For once, Larry, you're talking ball." Yeah, for once. Me, I don't ever talk ball.
So 10 o'clock Danny, tomorrow. Okay, you're on with Grant.
10 a.m. Grant Cohn talking Niners, and tomorrow night after the ball game, I'll jump on with you. We'll do more Giants Dodgers, and
all right,
and maybe Sunday, Sunday around dinner time, we'll get Ned back and we'll do a little recap.
Do a little four-way tomorrow with my guys if they're available. I know Eric should be available, and Los.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
we'll do it.
Yeah, they love talking Giants baseball. So yeah, we'll have some fun, and we'll figure some new stuff out too. Hopefully it's as good of an entertaining game as tonight's game was. That was just unbelievable.
One for the ages, man. Tonight was one for the ages.
Yes.
Danny, have a great night.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
There you go. The great Dan Coccimilgio. All right, let's thank our sponsors. We have a brand new sponsor, and you've seen it on the bottom scroll there. It's Marin Auto Glass. If you have a crack on your windshield, you're driving around Northern California, a pebble hits your windshield, you got a crack, and you're like, oh, man, now the crack's growing. Or maybe you got a shattered windshield and you need a new windshield. Give our friends Marin Auto Glass a call or check them out online at marinautoglass.com. They're at 415-883-3030. They will come to where your car is, pop out the old windshield, pop in the new windshield, clean up all the glass. It's a one-stop deal. It's incredibly convenient. So marinautoglass.com. My good friend Saeed is a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. We love Saeed and we love Marin Auto Glass. 415-883-3030. And thanks to Marin Auto Glass for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, our title sponsor is Pig in a Pickle. They've got 2 locations in Northern California. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County. They're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. Hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show with Dan Coccimilgio and the great Ned Colletti. Gilbert Gamboa says they're a starter away from being a legit contender. I knew they were going to be competitive, but not this good. Oh, man. Ben Bamboo, which is a great name. He says, more like 2 starters and another bat. Relax says, wrap it up. Wrap it up. Eddie K says, Larry, I know I just said you're talking ball, but I got to ask, what's with the Kirk Cousins being the last resort for the Niners? Like, what the fuck? Well, my point on Kirk Cousins is just that there's been some, talk that the Vikings are going to let him walk at the end of the year and they're going to let him be a free agent. So my whole thing on Kirk Cousins is he ain't coming here. He's not coming here. The only way Kirk Cousins is coming here is if Brock Purdy shows that he's no more than a backup quarterback, if Trey Lance falls on his face and does not fulfill his potential, and if Sam Darnold is the turnover monster in San Francisco that he was with the Jets and at SC, and the Niners get to the end of this year and they have no quarterback, they won't go into the draft, they will go sign Kirk Cousins. So to me, I would put that at like a 1% chance. Why? Because I think Trey is going to fulfill his potential. I think Brock Purdy is a legitimate quarterback, and I think Sam Darnold is likely to play much better in San Francisco than he ever played with the Jets or with the Panthers. So I don't think Kirk Cousins is coming here, but I just laid out the scenario in which he does. If Purdy's a backup, Trey proves he's not an NFL guy, Sam's a turnover monster, then guess what? Kirk Cousins will be a Niner, and it will happen next year, but I don't bank on it. Kyle McKiernan says, good show on 95.7 The Game today. You're in my ear all damn near all day. It's almost bothersome. My wife's like, what the hell is in your ear now? I'm like, nothing. The dinner I'm learning to cook will be epic. Good stuff. Good stuff. Ernie Chavez, Larry's a grinder. Always creating content. Yeah, we got some great stuff next week. John Lund is going to be on the show. We're looking forward to that. Love Johnny. Haberman and Middlecoff are stopping by on the show. Dave Lombardi possibly after he comes back from his honeymoon in Africa. Hoping to chase down Matt Barrows. A lot of good stuff. Vish Kumaran, who had to work late a lot this week. Vish, talked to him tonight. He'll be on next week. Jack Hammer next Friday. Grant next Monday. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff on the channel. Trying to chase down Adam Peters, Niners executive, to talk ball and talk about some of the young players. By the way, I did an interview this week with Ronald Awatt, the Niners rookie running back. Go check that out on YouTube. Talked to him for an hour. And really, really great young guy and an interesting young prospect. I think he's going to be a guy to watch for this summer. And Walter Washington. How late are you guys going to talk tonight, Larry? Well, till 1:05 in the morning, and it's 1:03 right now. So join me tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Grant Cohn will be in the house. We'll talk Niners in the morning. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks to Ned. Thanks to Danny. Thanks to all of you. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one.